hear some tasty waves, cool buzz, and I'm fine.
Do you remember the teen film that once shocked audiences for daring to portray first life experiences so bluntly? Heartbreak, sex, abortion, work pressure, and the journey of finding oneself. In 1982, Fast Times at Ridgemont High appeared, not just as a film, but as an explosion that completely changed how Hollywood viewed teenagers. But what's even more astonishing is it all originated from a real social experiment by Crowe, and the film was helmed by a nearly unknown director at the time, Amy Heckerling. Behind that seemingly familiar story lies a series of unbelievable behind-the-scenes secrets, decisions that nearly changed the entire film. Major names that were missed, and even the brief appearance of a future star, Nicolas Cage. Let's explore 19 interesting facts about Fast Times at Ridgemont High, and get ready to be surprised by things you've never heard before. 19. The film originated from a real social experiment by Crowe. Crowe, a young journalist only 22 at the time, and already with 7 years of experience writing for Rolling Stone and Cream, since age 14 turned a social experiment idea into the foundation for both the nonfiction book and the film Fast Times at Ridgemont High. Born in 1957 and graduating early from a strict Catholic high school, Crowe felt he had completely missed the typical teenage phase. Stories about sex, drugs, and rock and roll that he often heard his peers talk about. In the summer of 1979, he discussed the idea with a publisher in New York. He would return to high school as a real student to document the internal life of American teenagers. He moved back to San Diego to live with his parents and chose Claremont High School, a typical public school in the city, to carry out this mission throughout the 1979 to 1980 school year. Crowe obtained permission directly from Principal William Gray and officially went undercover as a 12th grade student named Dave Cameron. Age 17, he attended full classes, sat in the cafeteria, wandered after school, and blended into student groups. Crowe took detailed notes, sometimes openly recorded conversations, and listened in on everything around him, from secret love affairs, drug parties, to surf culture and shopping mall life. The result was the book Fast Times at Ridgemont High. A true story, published in 1981 by Simon & Schuster, with all events based on Crowe's real observations. He changed the school name to Ridgemont High, altered character names and some surface details, but kept the spirit and most of the sexual desire and drunkenness stories of teens intact. The book quickly became a phenomenon for its rare authenticity. Just 1 year later, Crowe wrote the film's screenplay himself, keeping nearly verbatim situations and dialogue from the book, turning a personal social experiment into the hit 1982 film, one of the most iconic teen comedies in Hollywood history. What do you think about this fascinating experiment by Crowe? Share your thoughts in the comments below. 18. The character The Rat. Mark Ratner was based on a real person. When screenwriter Crowe went undercover as a student at Claremont High for research, he befriended Rathbone, a somewhat shy and awkward student. This image was later fictionalized into Mark the Rat Ratner in the film, a boy clumsy in love, lacking confidence, and often coached by friends on how to flirt.
Say to her once we get in the car.
It's no problem, Red. What you need is my special 5-point.
However, real life was much more complicated. Rathbone was reportedly unhappy with how he was portrayed, believing Crowe exaggerated his nerdy traits while ignoring more interesting aspects of him. Rathbone himself said that all the dumb stuff was assigned to me while the cool things were given to others. Some cool actions in the film, like ordering pizza into the classroom, were according to Rathbone actually his ideas in real life, but were reassigned to characters like Spicoli. What makes the story more remarkable is Rathbone's completely opposite career path later in life. Instead of remaining an awkward nerd, he became one of the most famous tech authors in the world. In 1992, he co-wrote PCs for Dummies, followed by books like Windows for Dummies, selling millions of copies and becoming global bestsellers. His simple, humorous writing style helped millions of computer illiterate people approach technology, turning him into a true computer guru. 17. The shoes that drove youth crazy at the time. In the film, the character Jeff Spicoli, played by Sean Penn, is portrayed as a true Southern California surfer stoner, lazy, carefree, and living outside all rules. To create that image, Penn not only acted, but also directly contributed to shaping the costume, including choosing black and white checkerboard Vans slip-ons, a seemingly small detail that was incredibly on point for the character.
Wait a minute, there's no birthday party for me here.
In the early 1980s, Vans was still a local brand tied to skateboarding culture in Southern California. These checkerboard slip-ons were mostly seen in places like Venice Beach or Long Beach, and were hardly popular across the United States. They were products known only within skate and surf communities. But when the film was released, the effect exceeded all expectations. Spicoli wearing Vans slip-ons throughout the movie immediately captivated audiences, especially young people. From a local item, the shoes quickly became a nationwide trend, with demand skyrocketing after the film's release. Notably, there was no official advertising or sponsorship deal between Vans and the film crew, meaning the brand received free advertising throughout the entire movie simply thanks to an actor's costume choice. More than 40 years later, checkerboard Vans are still widely sold and have become a fashion icon associated with the 1980s. Do you like these iconic Vans shoes? Share your thoughts. 16. Herman Munster thought the film was too vulgar. Gwynne, known for his gentle, humorous image in the series The Munsters, was initially invited to play the strict teacher Mr. Hand. However, after reading the script, he declined, believing the film contained too many sensitive elements related to teenage sex and drug use. This is understandable considering Gwynne's career and image. He was associated with family-friendly roles suitable for general audiences, while Fast Times went in the opposite direction, a teen film that openly explored adult issues like losing virginity, abortion, sex, and rebellious student life. After Gwynne declined, the role of Mr. Hand was given to Ray Walston, and this became one of the most iconic casting choices of the film. Walston turned the character into a strict, sharp, yet highly memorable teacher, creating classic confrontations with Spicoli. 15. The film had a short-lived TV spin-off in 1986. After the unexpected success of Fast Times at Ridgemont High, Universal and CBS decided to adapt it into a sitcom in 1986. Notably, the project involved the original creators. Amy Heckerling returned as producer and directed several episodes, while Cameron Crowe served as a creative consultant. The series aired from March to April 1986, but lasted only 7 episodes before being canceled. The cast was almost entirely replaced with young actors like Patrick Dempsey, Courtney Thorne-Smith, and Dean Cameron, while only Ray Walston and Vincent Schiavelli returned from the original film. Recasting the familiar characters made audiences feel disconnected from the original movie. A bigger issue lay in the nature of the adaptation. The original film was famous for its frank portrayal of sex, drugs, and teen life, bold, R-rated elements. But on national television, the series had to tone down these aspects significantly, making the content much safer and milder. As commonly noted, it was no longer truly Fast Times, but just a fairly typical school sitcom. Have you watched this series? What do you think? Share your thoughts. 14. This was the feature film debut of director Amy Heckerling. Today, Amy Heckerling is a highly renowned director, but at the time, choosing her to direct Fast Times at Ridgemont High was quite a risky decision in the early 1980s. Before that, she had little experience with feature films, being known mainly for short films at the American Film Institute. Her most notable work was her thesis film, Getting It Over With, about a 19-year-old girl determined to lose her virginity before turning 20. The film was even considered for an Oscar nomination and impressed Universal chairman Tom Mount. However, the path wasn't easy. Universal initially didn't fully trust a newbie like Heckerling. Additionally, teen films at the time were considered B-movies, with little artistic or commercial value, making the studio hesitant. During production, the studio showed little enthusiasm and released the film on a limited scale due to fear of failure. Nevertheless, Heckerling's outsider perspective became the breakthrough factor. She brought a very different approach, focusing on real teenage experiences, especially female perspectives on sex, friendship, and growing up, something rare at the time. As a result, despite early doubts, Fast Times at Ridgemont High became a turning point that redefined the modern teen movie genre. The film's success not only paved the way for directors like John Hughes, but also proved that teen stories could be both commercially successful and artistically valuable. What do you think about Amy's first film? Share your thoughts. 13. Jennifer Jason Leigh actually worked at Perry's Pizza. Jennifer Jason Leigh, then 20 years old, showed remarkable dedication in preparing for her role as Stacy Hamilton. A 15-year-old 10th grade girl working at Perry's Pizza in Fast Times at Ridgemont High. The role required innocence, awkwardness, and the pressures of a young girl entering the world of sex, part-time work, and friendships at the mall. Instead of relying solely on the script or direction, Leigh decided to truly live the role by getting a job as a waitress at Perry's Pizza, the actual pizza place located in Sherman Oaks Galleria, where most mall scenes were filmed. Leigh worked as a real employee for about 3 weeks before filming began. She didn't reveal her identity, simply applying like a normal young woman, serving real customers, cleaning tables, taking orders, and handling the pressure of evening shifts in a busy shopping center. Alongside this, she revisited her own high school diaries and letters to evoke emotional authenticity. She wanted Stacy not just to be acted, but to feel real. From the confusion of first sexual experiences to the innocence mixed with curiosity about love and sexuality. Director Amy Heckerling later praised Leigh's method, saying it contributed greatly to the film's rare authenticity. Thanks to her real-life experience at the actual filming location scenes of serving pizza, interacting with customers, and handling work pressure felt so vivid that audiences felt like they were watching a documentary rather than a comedy.
Linda, you didn't show up.
That little prick.
I called his house.
12. Cage was the only actor under 18 in the main cast. Although the film is about high school students, because the content is quite sensitive, the casting team set an unwritten rule. Actors had to be 18 or older to avoid legal constraints related to child labor and working hours. In that context, Cage, who was only 17 at the time, became the only exception in the cast, and this immediately put him in an invalid position from the very beginning. To overcome this barrier, Cage lied about his age during casting in order to land a bigger role. However, the truth was quickly discovered: he was not yet 18, meaning he could not work with long and flexible shooting schedules like adult actors. This was not just a formal issue, but also a strict regulation of the American film industry, where underage actors are limited in the number of working hours per day, must have supervision and special conditions. Things that could slow down the production progress of a fast-shooting film like Fast Times. Therefore, Cage, although once considered for the lead role of Brad Hamilton, was demoted to a very small role called Brad's Bud, and most of his scenes were even cut from the final version of the film. 11. David Lynch was almost the film's director. During the project's development phase, Universal executives actually proactively approached David Lynch, who had just risen to prominence after The Elephant Man, as a potential directing choice. Cameron Crowe even met Lynch in person to discuss the script. However, Lynch's reaction was very much in line with his own style. After reading the script, he was polite but quite confused about being invited to direct a teen comedy. He commented that it was a cute story, but frankly said that it was not the kind of film I make, and declined the project. At the same time, Lynch also turned down Return of the Jedi because he did not want to make a film under George Lucas's vision. This decision to refuse ultimately opened the door for Amy Heckerling, who at the time was just a nearly unknown young director, to step into the project. 10. The film has no original score. In terms of music, Fast Times at Ridgemont High stands out for not having an original score written specifically by a professional composer. The entire soundtrack mainly relies on pre-existing songs and a small portion of library music from Universal Studios' archives. Irving Azoff, a legendary music manager and co-producer of the film alongside Art Linson, held the decisive role over the soundtrack. Azoff wanted to use rock and new wave music to reflect teen culture of the late 1970s to early 1980s, while also leveraging his connections to include many familiar artists. As a result, a double soundtrack album was released, but the film contains no entirely new music, Many songs were simply licensed and inserted directly into scenes, creating the feeling of actually listening to the radio in a shopping mall or in a character's car. Despite lacking an original score and relying on Universal's library, the film's soundtrack still became an icon-defining 80s teen music. Songs like Somebody's Baby by Jackson Browne, We Got the Beat by the Go-Go's, and especially Raised on the Radio by the Ravens became closely associated with the image of American teens, from scenes of Brad washing his car, shopping at the mall, to dreamy moments or parties. Raised on the Radio, with its catchy melody and nostalgic lyrics about radio and rock and roll, became one of the most memorable tracks often played when Brad is driving or in everyday life scenes. 9. Heckerling brought friends, neighbors, and ex-lovers into the film. One of the most interesting elements behind Fast Times at Ridgemont High is how director Amy Heckerling almost turned the casting process into a real-life personal social network. Instead of only recruiting professional actors, she and writer Cameron Crowe brought friends, lovers, neighbors, and acquaintances directly into the film, creating a very natural and lifelike feeling. This was not only about saving costs or convenience, but also reflected Heckerling's filmmaking philosophy. She wanted the film to feel like a slice of real life, where the characters feel like people you could meet in real life. The clearest example is Judge Reinhold, who played Brad Hamilton. He was not a traditional casting choice, but simply because he was a neighbor living upstairs from Heckerling in Los Angeles. Similarly, Heckerling also brought in her ex-husband, David Brandt, along with his real-life band Reeves Nevo and the Cinch to play the band performing in the prom scene. Not stopping there, Heckerling also cast her ex-boyfriend Martin Brest as the doctor in the field trip scene. Additionally, Nancy Wilson, who was Crowe's girlfriend at the time and later became his wife, also appeared as a cameo in a very memorable scene, the girl sitting in the car next to Brad and laughing at him when he wears the Captain Hook's uniform. What do you think about this fact? Share your thoughts in the comments below. 8. Sean Penn had already been silently approved by Amy. According to director Amy Heckerling, the first time she saw Sean Penn was not in the audition room, but when he was sitting on the floor in the hallway, waiting to audition. Just from that moment, the way he looked up, his attitude, and his very offbeat energy, Heckerling almost immediately felt that this is Spicoli, even though she had seen many other actors who performed better on paper before. However, Sean Penn did actually audition, but in a very unusual way. Penn himself later admitted that his audition was terrible because he barely tried to act in a traditional way. Instead, he walked in with an almost arrogant confidence and essentially declared, "I know this thing." He did not try to impress with acting technique, but with the belief that he already was that character. This offbeat approach perfectly matched the character Jeff Spicoli, a surfer stoner living outside all rules. After being cast, he continued to immerse himself extremely, wearing the character's clothes in real life, speaking like Spicoli all the time, and asking everyone to call him by the character's name.
Just like this new schedule's totally confusing.
7. Bruce Springsteen's sister appeared in a cameo role. At that time, Pamela was the sister of Bruce Springsteen, one of the biggest music icons in America. In the film, she only appears very briefly as a dark-haired cheerleader in the pep rally scene, standing on the left side of the frame. When participating in the film in 1982, Pamela Springsteen was still a young actress just starting her career. But the interesting thing is that Pamela's career path later took a completely different direction from this brief cheerleader image. In the late 1980s, she became well known in the horror film fan community when taking on the villain role Angela Baker in Sleepaway Camp, 2 Unhappy Campers, and Sleepaway Camp 3 Teenage Wasteland. These 2 cult horror films helped her build her own reputation, completely separate from the shadow of her famous brother. 6. Heckerling wanted each character's fate to remain mysterious. A strange thing happened in that the film's ending was not planned the way audiences saw on screen. According to director Amy Heckerling's original intention, the film would end in an open-ended way, stopping at the moment the characters finished the school year, leaving their futures unresolved just like in real life. Heckerling wanted to avoid a wrapped-up ending because she believed that teenage life does not have clear endings. Everything is still ongoing and not yet defined. However, Universal Pictures had a different viewpoint. They worried that an overly open ending would leave audiences feeling a lack of emotional payoff, so they requested an added ending, meaning title cards updating each character's future. This approach was actually not new, but directly inspired by American Graffiti, a famous coming-of-age film that also ended with title cards revealing the characters' later fates. Therefore, after the main story closes, audiences are shown a series of humorous updates about each character. For example, Brad becomes a convenience store manager. Damone is arrested for selling black market tickets and has to work at 7-Eleven, while Spicoli has bizarre achievements such as saving a famous person and spending all his reward money on a rock party. These lines are both satirical and create a light feeling, closing the characters' journeys in a clear way. What do you think about this ending? Share your thoughts with me. 5. Tom Cruise was considered for the lead role. Initially, Hanks was on the list of names considered for the role of Brad, the typical older brother character who is both confident and awkward in adult life. However, at that time, Hanks was not yet the movie star the public knows today, but was mainly recognized through the television sitcom Bosom Buddies. In the early 1980s, Tom Hanks was still at a very early stage of his career. The film that would help him break out, Splash 1984, was still a few years away, and his image at the time was associated with gentle, likable comedic characters on television. This made him not yet a safe choice for a leading role in a feature film, especially a teen film with sensitive elements like Fast Times. In the end, the role went to Judge Reinhold, who brought a very different energy, both self-satisfied and naive, and extremely fitting with the image of American youth at that time. This decision turned out to be very correct because Reinhold made Brad one of the most memorable characters in the film. Meanwhile, Tom Hanks continued on his own path, and just a few years later became one of the biggest actors in Hollywood, even winning multiple Oscars, a turning point that no one at the time of casting could have predicted. 4. Leigh's family was very kind to Brian Backer. Backer, who played Mark the Rat Ratner, came from New York and went to Los Angeles to participate in the film while still struggling financially. He was a stage actor who had just won a Tony Award, but that did not mean he had comfortable living conditions when entering Hollywood. Meanwhile, Jennifer Jason Leigh grew up in a Hollywood family in Los Angeles, where the film was shot. In that context, Leigh's family made a very memorable gesture. They let Backer stay with them for free throughout the filming period, helping him reduce financial pressure. According to Backer himself, the fact that he flew from Brooklyn and had almost no money made this help extremely important. It was not just about accommodation, but also a form of emotional support in an unfamiliar filmmaking environment. 3. They borrowed the mascot from the school where they filmed. A small but extremely interesting detail is how the film borrowed real life to build its fictional world, specifically the school mascot. In the film, Ridgemont High is introduced as a typical high school in California. However, in reality, most school scenes were filmed at Van Nuys High School, a real high school in the San Fernando Valley. The interesting thing is that the film crew did not create a new mascot for the fictional school, but kept the real school's mascot wolves. In other words, the Ridgemont Wolves in the film are actually the real-life mascot of Van Nuys High School. Instead of spending effort redesigning all symbols, uniforms, logos, the crew simply used what already existed, both saving costs and increasing authenticity. 2. Forrest Whitaker gained 50 pounds just to play a football player. Forrest Whitaker, at that time only 21 years old, and a college student with a football background, showed remarkable commitment from his very first film role in Fast Times at Ridgemont High. The character Charles Jefferson is the star defensive player of the Ridgemont High team, a large aggressive player portrayed through the famous enraged football player scene where he furiously destroys the entire defense of the opposing Lincoln team after believing his Camaro was vandalized. Director Amy Heckerling wanted Jefferson to look bigger, more powerful, and more intimidating to enhance both the humor and drama of the football scene. Whitaker, although having an athletic build, was at the thinnest stage of his life due to lack of food while being a poor student. He decided to gain weight significantly to match the image of a big, strong football player that the film required. According to Forrest Whitaker himself in an interview with the Los Angeles Times in 2016, He had to gain about 50 pounds just for this role. The weight gain process happened quite quickly during the preparation period before filming, mainly through a higher calorie diet and possibly combined with training to maintain muscle. 1. The film created an unexpected buzz. From the beginning, Universal Pictures almost did not have high expectations for the film. They were concerned about the overly sensitive content and the lack of big stars in the cast, to the point that they once considered not releasing it widely. As a result, the film was initially released on a limited scale with minimal promotion and almost no significant marketing campaign. However, as soon as it hit theaters, the film began to generate surprising signals. In its opening weekend, it grossed about $2.5 million, a fairly impressive number compared to its budget of only about $4.5 to $5 million. More importantly, audience reactions were extremely positive. They returned to watch it multiple times, quoted lines, and spread word of mouth about the film. This made Universal change its strategy, quickly expanding the number of theaters from a few hundred to more than 700. From a doubted film, Fast Times gradually became a clear commercial success. Its total domestic gross reached about $27.1 million, roughly 6 times its production budget, a very high profit ratio for a small teen film at that time. Not only that, the film's life cycle was further extended through VHS releases and later television broadcasts, helping it reach multiple generations of audiences and continue generating revenue for many years. More important than the box office numbers is the cultural impact the film left behind. Initially, some critics dismissed it as vulgar or just a typical teen comedy, but over time, it has been reevaluated as a pioneering work for portraying teenage life in a realistic and unromanticized way. After looking back at 19 behind-the-scenes facts, it can be seen that Fast Times at Ridgemont High is not just a simple teen film, but also a treasure trove full of strange, surprising, and sometimes pivotal stories. From casting decisions that nearly changed Hollywood history, personal relationships woven into every frame, to the way the film overcame initial skepticism to become a cultural icon, all of these contributed to creating a work that is both authentic and long-lasting in influence. So what about you among all the facts above? Which one surprised or impressed you the most? Share your thoughts. Thank you for watching, and if you enjoy behind-the-scenes film content like this, don't forget to subscribe so you won't miss the next videos.